quite a historic night for the game of basketball, as a Northern Ohio icon reached yet another milestone. So, my family and I gathered around the TV late last night and watched the replay of my 500th victory. Such a great night for basketball that will live on forever. Anyway, let's start the show starring arguably the greatest of all time, me. Let's start things off by taking a look at the past week's hoop action as seen on the OH.Report, as we toss it over to Brian Skowronski for the latest edition of The Rewind.
All right, thank you, Coach Balogh. And man, what a time for high school hoops right now. The ladies are going to wrap up their regular season, of course, this week. The fellas will a week after this, and then we got playoffs coming up for both right on the horizon. So what does that mean? A lot of conference championships were up for grabs, and we got plenty of highlights to show you with some that were able to snatch some titles this past week, as we'll throw it in the Rewind and take it back to the last 7 days. We begin in KMAC country with the Lady Indians trying to stay in the conference title race, and that's Candace Millizer hitting the three to open things up for Mount Gilead. Later in the quarter, Aubrey Thomas taking it to the hole to finish off an 18-0 run. They led East Knox 18-2 after one. This is second quarter action now. Ava Baker fighting through multiple defenders to get in on the action. Now it's Grace Shipman. It's her turn. The three from the corner. They would hit 6 in the game and run away with this one, 50-25, to set up a winner-take-all KMAC championship game at Cardington that we got for you shortly. Shelby at Clear Fork, a great game down in the valley. Start with you mid-fourth and Eve Schwemley giving Shelby its first lead since the second quarter, but Clear Fork would have an answer at the other end. Annika Labaki hits the three, plus there's a foul away from the shot. They would hit one of two free throws to take the lead. So time running out now. Lady Whippets down 4, and Charlie Neese gonna score there to cut it down to just a 2-point contest. Later after that, the Lady Colts would turn over Shelby with a chance to tie it, but Mel Bluebaugh gets the steal. Clear Fork snaps a 12-game losing skid to the Lady Whippets as they win it 53-51. Carrie at Upper Sandusky's next, and this was a back-and-forth game until late in the third with Macy Wentling hitting the jumper there. Carrie had a 10-point lead before the Lady Rams would start to go on a run. Take you mid-fourth quarter action now, and it's going to be Grace Walton making it a 3-point game. They then would tie the game at 61 each, but the Lady Devils had a chance to win it in regulation. Riley Yost gets a good look, but it's not going to go, so we are headed to overtime. 65 all now with less than a minute left in the extra session, and Leah Kinley driving the lane and scores. That's going to be the deciding factor too, folks, as the Lady Rams would win a great tournament tune-up game, 69-65 for win number 15. Mansfield Christian at Lucas, who was trying to win their 5th straight NBC title, and Corbin Toms so silky with the left, not even looking this time as he shovel passes it in traffic. Cubs were up huge in the second before Amar, the star Davis, tried to make things interesting. He had a solid night, knocking down a big triple here off the inbound that would cut it down to 19, but there's just too many Toms to contain, and they would both douse the Flames as the Cubs win it going away by 24 points, finishing undefeated in the NBC to clinch yet another title. Madison at Mansfield, City game round 2, and the Rams looking to even the season series as Jaden Jeffries dropping a bomb on the opening possession there. But the Tigers, they went streaking a bunch in this game. Here's Carry-On Lindsay off the outlet. He would score. Senior High would lead by 1 after the opening frame. Take you second half now. Seven Allen lines up the triple. He knocks it down, but you better get back on defense to slow the Tigers or Chunky Haney. Gonna hit you with the whirly bird. Whoop! He takes it in for 2. It was tight though. Closing minute of action, and Mansfield Senior hits some big shots. They would start to pull away for an 8-point victory to keep their slim OCC championship hopes alive. 58-50 your final. Cardington hosting Mount Gilead with that aforementioned outright KMAC title on the line, and the Lady Indians were hungry for the crown. As Danielle Polcati knocked down the triple there, but Abigail Hardwick and the Lady Pirates, though they faced an uphill battle all night with injuries and some foul trouble, they would battle until the final minutes. A late surge in the final couple minutes, though, would trim the Mount Gilead lead to 12, but Madeline Nelson and the Lady Indians never let up, taking that outright KMAC championship 45-33 at Cardington, their first ever KMAC chip. Senior night now, back on the reservation at Mount Gilead, and they had a good time in this one, the quiet one. Candace Millizer hitting the deep 2, nothing quiet about that. Madeline Nelson doing what she's done all season, getting the steal. She's going to take it the distance in here for the bucket. Later on, it's going to be Tatum Nail with the rainbow from the baseline, as every single Lady Indian senior got into the scoring column on this night. Grace Shipman included, hits the 3 there, and the KMAC champs cruise to a 54-23 victory to earn win number 16 on the campaign. Mammoth non-conference matchup at the Haas here. SBC leading scorer Max Dawson following the rule that if at first you don't succeed, well, try again. He does there with the mic and drill put back. Same scenario, other end though, and it's going to be Logan Toms fighting his way through traffic, grabs the offensive board, and the second chance points are coming. Dawson went berserk per usual. Here's 3 of his game best, 27 on the corner tray, but the Cubs, they still had a chance down the stretch. Andrew Smolin gonna can his second straight triple here to make it just a 1-point game in the final minute, and Willard could not close it out. You see there's the missed shot. Cubs down 3, final chance to extend the game. Mullen again, pretty clean look. Not this time though, and the Crimson Flashes stay hot with their 4th straight victory, 60-57 as they defend home court, beating the Cubs for the 2nd straight season and ending Lucas's 6-game win streak. So that's all the games that you need to see from last week. We'll take a quick timeout and we'll be right back with plenty more Joe Show on the way.
Welcome back to the Joe Show. I am once again joined by the North Central Ohio Joe Lenardi, Travis Berardi, with another edition of his tournament update.
Thanks once again, Coach. Not often do I get to work with the GOAT of North Central Ohio, Joe Balogh, but it's a pleasure to be back. You know, we went over the Country Roads rankings for 2 weeks, the girls' brackets, but now the boys' brackets are out, and we're going to break down 3 of our Northwest District squads. We went 2, 3, and 4 last week with girls, but I think 2 is the most intriguing. We'll save that for last. Let's get right into things with the Division 4 Willard District, and I think by far the top 2 teams have the best shot of playing for a district championship. Crawford and Lucas, they're on both top and bottom ends of the bracket. So let's start with that. First for Colonel Crawford, they get the 10 or 12 seed Plymouth. Lucas going up against probably a 14 or a 13 seed, so everybody was avoiding them.
Yeah, and I think the only, I guess, maybe intriguing part of this is how coaches think a little bit. You know, and knowing David Sheldon for a long time, he's always favored that they're going to take the bye when they can take the bye. So, you know, that was his concern, I think, of getting that 1 or 2 seed, that he would have that chance to do it. Then in talking with Coach Eisman last night, you know, his philosophy's always kind of been, we want to play. And I think the emphasis for him was, he said they'll have, I think, over either 7 or 8 days off from their last game. So he didn't want to wait any longer. So he jumped right into play on that Tuesday night. And then, as you said, pretty much everybody avoided them. So the lower seeds, have to match up with those two powerhouses that are in this district.
And other than that, I think the intriguing area is on top with Colonel Crawford's side of things, where you have Mansfield Christian, Norwalk St. Paul going up against each other, and South Central and Danbury. Who is going to be the team that comes out of that to play Colonel Crawford? Because I think it's pretty even up and down those lines.
Yeah, I would agree. And in kind of talking to some coaches that were at the draw, one of the things they talked about was that Mansfield Christian passed a couple times because they didn't really want to play Danbury Lakeside in an opening game. But that would be a matchup that would be in the sectional final. So that sectional final, is intriguing as far as the way it looks on paper. You have 4 teams that are pretty well matched, and any one of those 4 teams can come out of that. And
then down at the bottom, Seneca East, they're a 3 seed. They take on Buckeye Central, a Northern 10 matchup in the sectional semi. They get either Crestline or Monroeville in the sectional final. Is Seneca East one of those teams that maybe see competing with Lucas or Crawford, or is it Lucas Crawford playing for a district title?
Well, I think looking at it, I'm going to say Lucas Crawford playing for a district title. However, you take a look at Seneca East, one of the kind of the intriguing things with that is this will be the 3rd time they play Buckeye Central. Always hard to play. I don't care if you've beaten a team badly. That's difficult to play. But the other thing I think Seneca East has going for them too, they played in a pretty rugged Northern 10 league schedule.
Very tough.
So I guess what you're hoping for if you're in Seneca East's shoes is those games that you either won in the league or lost in that league have prepared you maybe for a surprise tournament run here in Division 4.
So there you have it. Crawford 1, Lucas 2, Seneca East 3, but it's looking like Lucas Crawford going to be fighting for that rematch at Willard for a district championship game. All right, let's move to Division 3 now in the Norwalk district, where the number 1 seed is Cardinal Stritch. Number 2, though, is the Crestview Cougars. They're at the top of the bracket, and they face a tough sectional final matchup, either Winford or Genoa, 2 teams that, I think have a chance, if they do move on, to really compete with Crestview.
I mean, Crestview's probably going to end the season with 20 wins, which for John Kurtz and his team, outstanding season. But you're right, that sectional final matchup is going to be an intriguing matchup because, number 1, you have 2 teams in Winford and Genoa that I saw Winford play Crawford the other night. For the first 12 minutes of that game, they were outstanding, and then Crawford kind of locked them down. Struggling a little bit here lately. I think they've lost their last 3. But beat Crawford about 2 weeks ago.
They did.
You have Genoa, who's 14-5. They're 11-1 in their conference. Probably have a chance to win that conference. So that sectional semifinal is going to be a game that's going to be a highly motivated, contested basketball game. So now, even though they don't have as much time to prepare, that team has a game under their belt. And sometimes when you get in the tournament, the team that's already played a game, they don't have those tournament jitters. And there's going to be a little bit of pressure on Crestview, being in the number 2, having won 20 games. Whoever it is, Winford or Genoa, they're going to come in with some momentum coming off of a sectional win and knowing they got a chance to win a sectional title.
And then if they win a sectional title, they're probably going to have to go up against Huron and what you think is one of the best players in this district.
Well, and you take a look at Huron. Huron was the Division 2 district champion last year. And they returned a big core of that, and probably the best player, I think, maybe in this district, in Dylan Holler, who had an outstanding year last year, has had a solid season this year. And Huron's, they're going to be coming off of at the end of the season, where I think their final game of the year is I believe, against Willard, where that's going to decide probably if there's a tie for the SBC conference there, or that Willard can win it outright. So again, you're going to have a team that's tournament tested, a highly motivated team if they get to that district semifinal.
And then looking at the bottom, Margaretta, they got the bye. They're the 5 seed. Always one of those tough teams in their district, could be playing Oak Harbor or a Western Reserve team under head coach Chris Sheldon. It's won 7 of 10.
Yes, I mean, coming into the season, the word out was that Western Reserve was not going to be very good. And in talking to several coaches, they say this might be one of Chris's best coaching jobs, that they've been able to win 10 games at this point. And again, even though he lost a lot of players from last year, they had success in the tournament a year ago. And those players, even though maybe they didn't play a lot, they sat on that bench, they were in that atmosphere. I have a lot of respect for of course, I mentioned Rob, David, and Chris. The one thing you're going to know if you're going to play a Western Reserve team, they're going to be very, very well prepared. So that matchup with Margaretta could be an interesting matchup.
And then the winner is probably going to get Cardinal Stritch. I don't know much about them. Do you know much about Cardinal Stritch?
No, just know that they're 16-2. They play a pretty solid schedule. I think they just had a big win. It was either maybe over Toledo Christian or Emmanuel Christian, who's one of the better teams in that area. That Martin RPI pretty much tells you how teams are. So being the #1 ranked team there, they're going to be a formidable foe in the district tournament there.
So this is a little bit more wide open than the Division 4-wheeler district because you have Crestview, you have Cardinal Stritch, then you have the likes of Huron, maybe a Margaretta, or maybe one of those underdog seeds as well. So it's a bit more open, but you think at least 3 of the top 4 seeds are probably going to make a district semi.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably always going to be a surprise, but typically when you take a look at a bracket going into the district, it's usually, like you said, about 3 of the teams usually are going to make it. There may be one surprise in it.
All right, now let's go to the Division 2 district for Ashland, and there's more than just 3 teams that have a chance. I know Brian Skowronski saying he at least likes 6 teams there, but does this district bracket remind you of like early 90s when you had the likes of Lexington and you guys and Willard and a bunch of teams that you didn't really know who could make it out of there?
Yeah, I mean, this when we went from Division 3 to Division 2, the difference became kind of what we've already talked about with the brackets, is that when we were in 3, there was 2, maybe 3 teams that you were pretty sure that had the chance to get out of this district. When we went to Division 2, it became a team of 5 or 6 teams that you looked at it, and I think kind of the same thing here that you have is there's more than just the 4 seeds that could get out of this district.
So let's start at the top and look at the top seed, Sandusky, the high-flying offense. I think they average about 78 points per game or something like that. They'll take on rival Perkins or Vermilion. You got to think they're going to be favored in that one. Then below here, the first of the intriguing matchups, you have Mansfield Senior taking on Norwalk, Winter taking on Bellevue. That's one where I could see either of those 3 teams, sneaking past to get to a district semi.
Yeah, I mean, I think that up at the top, the Perkins Vermilion matchups will be an interesting matchup because you're going to have 2 teams playing for a 3rd time. Perkins has lost 4 of its last 5, I believe. But the other part of that Vermilion-Perkins matchup is they play the last game of the regular season. So you're going to
play back-to-back.
You're going to play on a Friday night and then come back and play on a Tuesday. So that's always an interesting thing as far as for a coach to try to work through. If you take a look at the bottom, Norwalk's kind of been a team that has been up and down. I mean, if you take a look at their schedule, they've won 3 or 4 in a row. They lose 3 or 4 in a row. Early in the year, they got beat, I think, by 1 or 2 by Tiffin. And then in the second round, they beat Tiffin, I think, by 16, Tiffin Columbian.
We've seen them
Tiffin Columbian, I think, is one of the top 4 seeds in Division 1 in the Toledo. So that's not going to be a cakewalk for senior high there. And then, you take a look, most of those teams, I think senior high had the 5, so they went right to Bellevue's bracket. And Bellevue's had a solid season at 12-5. But if you're taking a look at that top, you're probably going to say Sandusky's coming out of that. The below that, Bellevue, Mansfield Senior matchup, probably a coin flip.
Yeah. And now let's get down to the bottom of the bracket where it's even more jumbled with a few more teams that you think, hey, any of these guys can get out of the bracket. You have Ontario taking on Clear Fork in a sectional semifinal. At the last game they played at Clear Fork, it went to overtime, so that 7-11 matchup is going to be a fun one. The winner then gets Shelby. Ontario, I've seen them at Shelby. They played them close for a few quarters. Shelby pulled away late, but you never know with this Ontario squad. They've been picking up some momentum, so those 3 teams will start there. If Ontario can get by Clear Fork for a 3rd straight time, that's a pretty good matchup as well for a sectional final.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is whoever wins that Ontario-Clear Fork matchup. And Clear Fork's going to come in there with a lot of confidence because, I I mean, Ontario tied it on a bucket late, and kind of a lucky play. It was an air ball, and the kid rebounded it and stuck it in to tie it.
North Carolina State
won it. And then, but the other part for Shelby is Shelby plays Clearport this week, and then they end the season, with Ontario. So whichever team they match up with, it's going to be a 7 to 10 day turnover as far as playing that same team again.
And then on the bottom of that second half of the bracket, Willard Galleon, I think that's going to be something like you saw with Beebler, where it's 100 to 90, because those are two high-flying offenses. I wouldn't be surprised if both teams got into the 70s, but then the winner will get Lexington. And I could see, either team maybe winning that if Galleon has a great shooting night, but a Willard-Lexington matchup, that really intrigues me, Coach.
Yeah, that's intriguing, but the matchup in the semifinals is also intriguing, just from the standpoint, Willard's, with Dawson and Robinson, two really good players, but they're not real deep. Coming off two big wins this past weekend, and one of them beating Lucas. But Galleon, I saw Galleon play Ontario, and they were down 18 going into fourth, and had a chance to put the game into overtime. Scored, I think, 79 against Lex. So even though if you take a look, I think they've lost 5 or 6 in a row, they played better their last 2 games. But also, if Willard does come out of that matches with Lex, intriguing matchup, because number one, this would be one of the few matchups where a team hasn't played the other team during the season. So Lex is going to have to do a lot of scouting on Willard. Willard's going to do a lot of scouting on Lex. And the thing I know with Willard, with Dave Hershey as an assistant and Joe Bedingfield as the head coach, they're not going to leave any stone unturned, and they're going to pull out all the stops if they get to that sectional final. So that will be a very intriguing matchup. But the anticipation would be, if you're probably a realist, and if you're putting money on this, it's going to be a Lex Shelby semifinal in the district, which that's going to be outstanding, because it's going to be a replay, because they play this coming Tuesday.
Yes, they do.
At Shelby.
And I'll have a highlight of that game, but you get into the districts, then you don't know who's going to be in the districts, because like we said, there's 6-7 teams that could get out of there. But I mean, we can dream that we get that Lexington-Shelby matchup, and then one of them plays Sandusky in another high-scoring affair for the district championship. But do you think the team that gets out of this district has a real good shot at getting maybe to Dayton, because they've been so battle-tested through 3-4 games in the tournament?
To be honest with you, Travis, I haven't really looked at the regional bracket yet, but I think any team that comes out of this is going to be capable of doing it. If you take a look at their regular season resume, who they played, and the talent that they have, all those teams can score. All those teams, if we're talking about a Lex, a Shelby, or Sandusky, all of them can defend. And when you can defend and you can score, that usually puts you in a situation you can play with anybody that comes into your region.
All right, there it is for the brackets. First year using Martin RPI for the Northwest District for seeding purposes. And we've seen, even if it was a 2 seed that just got right behind the 1, teams were avoiding them. Do you like what this did for the draw this year?
I mean, not being at the draw, but looking at it from the outside, I liked it, because I think it was the fairest way to seed teams. I don't think there was any controversy as far as, somebody being a 5 seed or you dropping to an 8 seed. And the other thing I really liked about it is the Northwest being the pilot for this. They kept and allowed teams to choose where they could go in the bracket, which I think is important for coaches, because coaches then still have a chance that they can look up matchups and say, Team A, I match up with Team A better than I do Team B, and that's the team I want to go at. So even though we did the Martin RPI, you saw, some teams, some teams completely avoided the 1s. There were other teams that, avoided a number 2 in it. So I guess my hope is, and I look down the road, is I'm thinking probably that will be the way it might go across the rest of the state. I just hope we don't go to NCAA seeding, where I think they do, maybe in the Northeast, that you're just placed on a bracket. I still like the idea that a coach has a choice of where they want to play and who they want to play.
Yeah, and it all begins starting next week for the girls, and then the week after for the boys. We call this No Sleep Till April here at the OH.Report, because we're working every single day, and I cannot wait for that. But once again, as always, Coach, I appreciate you having me on, the GOAT of North Central Ohio basketball, Joe Balogh. But we're going to take a break. When we come back, more Joe Show right here, live and free on the OH.Report.
Yesterday, I made my way down to the Cub Cave to chat with the brothers Toms, Corbin and Logan, as they prepare for another run in the Division IV Willard District. See what they had to say in this edition of Around the Arena. We're here with Corbin and Logan Toms, and I know sports has been a big part of you guys' lives for a long time, because I remember, I think when you guys were 4th and 5th graders, you guys came to Ontario for the summer league, and I just remember at that young age how competitive both of you guys are. So we're going to go around the arena, ask you a few questions, let our audience find out a little bit about you. So as I mentioned earlier, you guys are really competitive. I guess who has influenced you to be that kind of competitors?
Growing up, I've had a lot of influences, but having 2 brothers is the biggest thing. You know, growing up, I always got made fun of because I was a lot smaller than him, or he would pick on me, you know what I mean? So going out and being able to compete with them at home, and then having Riley's friends like Sauter and Goose to always play with and make you better, it was just something you look back on and you're like, wow, that made me a lot more competitive, because I couldn't take the beatings that I did in the driveway without them. So
did you beat him a lot?
Most of the time, yeah. Either I won or it ended in a fight. But I was gonna say the same thing. You know, growing up, playing with older kids like Riley, Ethan Sauter, Goose, it made us, you know, have to compete and, you know, work as hard as we could just to be able to play outside of those guys. So I'd say, you know, Riley, Corbin, and then Ethan and Ethan.
So you guys have both played multiple sports. So I know one of the things in the summer, there's a lot of demand as far as the time to put into each of those sports. So talk a little bit about like what maybe your summers have been like as far as trying to balance, you know, that competitive nature in each of the sports.
It's definitely crazy. Usually, you know, football, you got June is 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. football. It's guts. Get up, you work out, you know, nobody wants to be there, it sucks. You got to fight through it. And then it's like, oh, I got to go to work, I got to go to basketball. So it's just one of those things where, like, in the moment, it's like, man, that sucks. When you look back on it, you're like, wow, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I went to that, because those are the things that when it's November in football, you're like, wow, that really made us better. That took us to the next level. And those summer leagues, those were fun. I miss that. It's just, in the moment, it's easy to complain and stuff, but in the end, you look back on it, you're like, I really should have enjoyed that more than I did. So
I think it's, you know, less about having to balance it because I enjoy it. Obviously, guts isn't that enjoyable because it, you know, it sucks. It's 6 to 8 in the morning, but you know, you go to guts because you know it'll benefit you when football season comes. You go to basketball in the summer because you know it'll benefit you when basketball season comes around. So I think it's more just, you know, trying to enjoy those summers, because it's better than being 24 and having to go to work in the summer rather than going to play sports.
That's true. You know, Lucas is a small community, but it's a community that really comes out and supports you guys. Like, what's it meant to grow up in this community?
It's definitely something you cherish, because you don't realize how great a community it is till you go to you see bigger schools and you see bigger communities. You're like, wow, they just don't, the camaraderie is not the same. And it really took me until my freshman year when we made that run in football. I was like, wow, you know, just to see everybody, just for such a small school and small community, come together for a sports team is just unbelievable. And it truly just, you never want to take those people for granted, because that's who, you know, those 500 or 600 of them, and it's crazy.
I definitely think it's unique to be a part of Lucas. It's something that I'm thankful for because, you know, ever since I was little, I came to games and I was a part of things because my dad was a coach. And my brother had one of his college teammates come to one of our games, and he thought the atmosphere was awesome, and he's from a big school. So just like hearing things like that and, you know, seeing the amount of people that come support us is just awesome.
You know, you played significant minutes. I think when you were a sophomore, you came in as a freshman and played significant minutes. You guys have both been part of really some successful teams, but if I take a look at where you guys are right now, okay, compared to maybe where you were last year, what would you say? How are you a different player from last year to this year?
It was definitely different my sophomore year because I went from having to be the main ball handler, kind of bring the ball up the court guy, to playing with a guy like Ethan Sauter. You know, that's a big jump. It sounds crazy, but I lacked confidence going into that year because my role was changed completely. And I struggled at the beginning of the season, but I'm blessed to have played with somebody like that and learned so much from him. Playing off guard or off away from him and just getting to play with him was truly special. Because then last year, having to be the guy that has to dribble the ball, be the guy to handle the ball, it was just something that I'll forever I benefited from it, and I'm blessed to play with a guy like that.
For me, I would say being able to create shots for myself but also get others involved. My freshman year, I had kind of like do the dirty work kind of a role and, you know, rebound, hustle, play good defense. And I feel like over the years I just try to develop my game better offensively and defensively, but I would say getting others involved on offense.
What have you enjoyed the most about getting to play on the same team? Or maybe you haven't enjoyed it. I would think you've enjoyed it. What's the most you've enjoyed?
This sounds kind of crazy, but you don't really realize how special it is until you see what people talk about. You see the articles. It's like the Toms brothers, it's just one of those things. I think it'll hit me in about 10 years when I realize I'm like, wow, it's truly special. And to play with Logan and play with Riley is something I'll forever cherish, and to grow up with them and play with them and everything, leagues, you know, AAU, all of that. It's just something not very many people get to do, and something I'd love to do.
I would definitely say the competitiveness of us at practice. You know, we guard each other pretty much every day, and playing with him since we played against each other when we were little all the way up, it's, you know, really helped us. And along with that, just seeing him succeed on the court, you know, being right next to him when he plays well or when we play bad. But just being able to, you know, see every moment and be together is awesome.
Favorite professional athlete you maybe model?
That's easy. Baker Mayfield.
You got a little bit of that in you. That little. I could see you planting that flag. What about you?
Luka Doncic for the Dallas Mavericks, definitely my favorite player.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Kyrie trade works out with them. Favorite food that you like to eat?
Oh, probably Italian pasta, most likely.
I'd say Mexican food. You know, either quesadillas or tacos, one of those two.
You know, you guys got to play in a lot of different venues, not just in your league and non-league, but also in the tournament. Like, what's the toughest place you think you've had to play at?
You know, we were talking earlier. He said Mansfield Christian, the Furnace. You know, everybody jokes about it, but that gym's tiny and it sucks and it's small and it's condensed, so it's not easy to play in. And then you got other games. Obviously, we're a small school, so we play a lot of small schools, small gyms. But getting to play like teams like when you coached at Ontario or the Crawfords, those games, it's just, you don't get to that atmosphere every night when you play in a conference like we do. So it's tougher to get your focus right when you're playing in those type of atmospheres. So it's definitely something I've enjoyed.
I would say either Central or Mansfield Christian because obviously the small gym size, and then running zone, it's hard to create offense or get in transition or do things like that just because of the gym size.
You guys have had a tremendous high school career so far. What's your best memory?
Probably sophomore year, just going into the season, you know, losing Riley to his accident and there was a lot of doubt. Nobody really thought that the Lucas Cubs would be the same Lucas Cubs without Riley, and to see, not even only to see us succeed, but to see Riley come in and the way he responded to that whole situation and actually help. A lot of people don't know, but he actually was a big help when it came to coaching us in practice, keeping us focused, and to go 19-8 or whatever we did, people didn't know how it was going to go. To win a district title that year was just something I'll never forget.
Mine's pretty similar. I would definitely say that year, making it to regionals, because we were the 5 seed. No one really believed in us outside of our team, so it was special to make it out of districts that year.
If I asked Coach Eisman to describe each one of you guys in one word, what would be the word he would say if I said describe you?
Probably either mouthy or confident.
What about you?
I did not know. God, I can't. One word?
One word that would describe you. I said.
Quiet.
Okay. So it's Super Bowl Sunday coming up. I know both of you guys have played football.
Yeah.
Chiefs and Eagles. Who do you got?
I mean, not a big fan of either, but I like Jalen Hurts' story. I'm gonna go Eagles.
What about you?
Eagles.
All right, so we can bet in Ohio. So if I'm going to place a bet, I need a score. What do you got to score? Eagles.
I'm gonna go. Both teams have pretty decent defenses. Jalen Hurts hasn't played in the Super Bowl before. It's got to be. I'm gonna go like 21-18.
Let's say 35-30.
35-30. All right. Round the arena with the Toms brothers.
You can catch the Toms brothers live and free next Tuesday night when Lucas takes on Clearport. Now it's time to send things over to Hayden Gray for the latest installment of our area stat leaders.
Well, thank you, Coach Balogh, and welcome into that time of the episode where we check out who's leading the statistical categories in the conferences in and around the area. And today we're going to do it a little differently. We're going to talk about both boys and girls at the same time, but we'll keep it the same, and we'll start off in rebounding as we always do. And we'll take a look at the girls. Coming in royally at number 5 is Katie Wagner out of Winford at 9.5 rebounds per night. Slightly above her at 9.8 is Emily Klopp from Mohawk. She looks to take Mohawk to new heights in the tournament this season. Haley Snyder comes in at number 3 at 10, even a night for River Valley. They take home a share of the MOAC title this season. At number 2 is Ava Brown, 10.3 boards a night for her out of Lady Lex. She's highest on the list this episode. She's been on our rebound list just about every episode this season. But at number 1, to no surprise, is the junior Corey Vermilia, 13 even rebounds a night for her. Now at the boys at number 5, Jeffrey Jones, 10.4 boards a night for him. Emerging towards the end of the season, he's kind of crept his way onto this list and was there earlier at the beginning of the season. At number 4, Jacob Maddie, 10.7 boards per night out of Colonel Crawford, looking to help carry them through this year's tournament. At number 3, Carson Myers, 11.2. He is the MOAC's top rebounder and the representative on this list. At number 2, Sam McMillan at 11.8. Tall and lengthy, nothing that I don't like about Sam McMillan's game. And at number 1 is Jedediah Brandon out of Mapleton, returns to the top spot. Sometimes we have Fireland stats, sometimes we don't. But Jedediah Brandon, when I do see his numbers, usually finds his way to the top. Switching gears to scoring on the girls' side at number 5, Kendall Beverly, 16.3 points a night out of South Central, representing the Firelands Conference on the list. At number 4, Brooklyn Mosier, 17.6 points a night from the MOAC's top scorer, and as I mentioned, they clinched a share of this year's conference crown. At number 3, joining the list for the first time this season, is Alexis Ripple out of Mansfield Christian at 19 points a night. She's battled injury this season, so awesome to see her back out there putting up big numbers. At number 2, Shelby Grover, 23 even a night. She'll try to defy the odds in the tournament this season. Don't look to have an easy bracket, but going to try and take the Lady Cubs as far as she can. And at number 1, Corey Vermilia, Are You Not Entertained? 29.6 points a night for the Lady Redbird. On the boys' side at number 5, he falls to 5th place after being first just a week ago. Matt Bland, still great numbers though, 21.8 points a night for the Indian of Mount Gilead. At number 4, Carson Myers, 21.9 points a night. The new top dog in the MOAC. He leads scorers in that conference and is 4th on our list. At number 3, Isaac Blair, 22.3 points a night for South Central. He is the lone Firelands Conference athlete on our scoring list for the boys. At number 2 is Mad Max Dawson out of Willard, 23.6 points a night, and just took down Lucas at home on Saturday, the junior, taking his team to new heights this season. But at number 1 this week is Jaden Jeffries. Let's take a closer look at Mr. Jeffries in our players spotlight. 23.7 points a night for the guard out of Madison. Nearly gave Crestview their first loss when they took them to overtime back on their undefeated streak, and recently has been bringing back that resurgence to Rams basketball. Mr. Jaden Jeffries, your scoring leader for this week. Final category of the day is assist. We'll start with the girls' side. At number 5 and 4 is a duo of Upper Sandusky Lady Rams who have been carving up the competition this season. Grace Walton and Leah Kinley at 3.5 and 3.7 assists per night respectively. At number 3, Riley Concert, 4 even a night. They have locked down another league title for what feels like forever in the Northern 10. At number 2, Grace Lamoureux, 4.2 assists per night for her out of South Central. She returns to the list after a few weeks where we hadn't seen her name on here. But at number 1, someone you're used to seeing every week is Miss Demi Hip out of Shelby, 4.9 a night. She will have senior night along with Audie Albert this Thursday versus Ontario, and I will have a highlight of the action for you. Now finally, the boys assist leaders. At number 5, for the first time, welcome to the list, Mr. Yun. Braden out of Cary, 4.6 a night for him. At number 4, the only list that he's on this week, I'm a little bit surprised, Alex Bruscotter, 5.1 assists per night for him out of Shelby. He's been on every list, just about every episode, so not taking anything away from the accomplishments of Mr. Bruscotter. At number 3, Kanan Allen, 5.3 assists per night out of Winford, looking to make noise in this year's tournament. At number 2, Chase Ebert, 5.5 assists per night out of River Valley, who had that double overtime thriller with Shelby back on Saturday night. But your number 1 leader, he's been it for the last 3 weeks, Jax Wenger, 5.7 assists per night out of Northmore, the lone representative for the KMAC on our list. That will do it for your weekly update on the statistical leaders in the area right here on The Joe Show. Don't go anywhere though. Coach B's Ballers is coming up right after this commercial break.
Back here on the Joe Show, it's time to meet the highest flyers in North Central Ohio. I've got a list of the area's best dunkers coming up on Coach B's Ballers. I must admit that I got a lot of help from the OH.Report staff of putting this list of dunkers together. So let's start here with our list. At number 5 is Cade Carpenter of the Fredericktown Freddies. Cade has led the Freddies to an overall record of 14-6 and a perfect 12-0 in the KMAC Conference, earning the Freddies a KMAC championship. He averages 14 points a game, grabs 8 rebounds. In a recent game versus Danville, Cowboy Cade dropped in 35 against the Blue Devils. Number 4 on our list is Braxton Baker of the Colonel Crawford Eagles. Braxton has had an outstanding season for the Eagles, averaging 20 points a game, 6 rebounds per game, and is shooting 78% from the free throw line, as well as 58% from two-point range and 38% from the three-point arc. The Eagles are currently 14-5 overall, 9-3 in the rugged Northern 10 Conference. Braxton will lead his Eagles into the Willard Division IV district as the number 1 seed in 2 weeks. Number 3 on the list is Baden Forop of the Lexington Minutemen. Baden has been a beast for the Minutemen in the paint. He averages 15 points a game and shoots over 59% from the field and 75% from the free throw line. He grabs 9 rebounds per game, and he has a total of 72 offensive rebounds for the Minutemen. The Minutemen are currently 16-2, and they sit atop of the OCC Conference. Number 2 on the list is Lex's freshman phenom, Braden Fogel. Braden stepped right into the Minutemen starting lineup at the start of this season, and he has proven to be a force for his team as he averages 13 points a game and 7 rebounds per game. As a freshman, his strength and athleticism has set him apart as one of the most special players in the Richland County area. The combination of Forop and Fogel will be tested over the next week, though, as Lex makes a 4-game road trip as they head to Worcester, then travel to OG, then are at Shelby next week, and wrap up the season at Mansfield Senior. And at the top of our list are 2 leapers from the Shelby Whippets. The Whippets sit atop the MOAC with a record of 11-1 and an overall record of 16-2. And our staff could not choose just one, so we have a 1B and a 1A. The 1B dunker is Alex Brushgotter. The 6'7" junior forward improved his strength and athleticism during the past season, and he has shown to be a nightmare for opponents to match up with. He's averaging 21 points a game, leading his team with 31 threes, and is an outstanding free throw shooter, shooting 84% from the line. Listed as our top dunker at number 1A, all right, is also junior Casey Lance. The 6'3" junior might be the most improved player in the area. He's averaging 12 points a game and grabbing 6 rebounds per game. He's had some amazing dunks this season. The combination of Brushgotter and Lance has led to a highlight reel of plays for the Red Rage to enjoy. That's a slam dunk on this week's edition of Coach B's Ballers. Welcome to Story Time. As we approach the end of the season, one of the things that coaches have to do is they need to evaluate. So as a head coach, for 30 plus years, some of the things that I look to evaluate was, first of all, we tried to evaluate our season. And things would be that we would look at is, did your team meet our expectations of what we had at the beginning of the season? What did your team do well? And, what do we need to make better for the upcoming year? Another thing that I would try to evaluate would be our coaches. May sound kind of goofy, but I really tried to have a conversation with, each of my coaches, junior through high school, kind of get their feel for the season, what their role was, and then also, depending on the coach, what their goals were down the road, and trying to give maybe them more responsibility as you prepared for the next season. But probably one of the most important things we do is we would evaluate our players, and that's what I would like to focus on today, as to how we did that. So one of the things that we did is at the end of the season, very shortly after we would lose our last game, which of course would be a tournament game. So right now as a head coach, you're hoping that that last game is going to be several weeks away. But we would have a meeting with our players, one, to make sure they turned in any gear that they had. But then the other part was for them to evaluate themselves and also evaluate their season. So you're going to see two forms that come up. And one form is we have players evaluate themselves on a scale of 1 to 10 in several specific areas. 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. And what we tried to tell players was, we want you to compare yourself to players that are in your age group, players that you're competing against every day here in practice, players that you play against in our league, on our schedule, and kind of more importantly, where you think you should be as a player, as a freshman, sophomore, or a junior. So if you take a look at this form, you can see there's 3 main areas: skills, athleticism, and intangibles. So as you take a look under skills, there were 5 areas that we tried to evaluate: ball handling, passing, shooting, rebounding, and defense. Under athleticism, we took a look at things such as your strength and power, quickness, reaction, and agility, body composition, and conditioning. So there we would be talking to players about, how much stronger do you need to get? Do you need to get quicker? These are some of the things that you need to do. And then the intangibles that were listed were basketball IQ, leadership, teammate, work ethic, dedication, and then we also try to put a big emphasis on how they were doing in the classroom. Because one of the things that we really believed in was that if you can't be a good student, you're never really going to be that good of a basketball player, because it takes much of the same discipline to do that. So the first thing we would have our players do is we gave them this sheet. And if you notice on this sheet that you're seeing, it's an actual evaluation, is that the players would first evaluate themselves at this meeting. So they would be evaluating themselves on a scale of 1 to 10, and then where it says coaches' comments, they would just simply have comments on their paper, that they could write any comments that they wanted there, and like an area that they might specifically want to improve on. Like, Coach, I want to really get better using my left hand in this off season. So that would be part of the evaluation. So the other part is, if you take a look at the other page that we gave them, we asked them specific questions. And if you take a look, like one of the first questions is, do you think you were treated fairly this season? They simply circle yes or no, and then they give an explanation to that. And then it goes down through several areas here, also looking at like projections for next year. So for example, as we take a look down at question number 7 on this, it says, do you plan on playing next year? Yes or no? Do you plan on playing, what level do you plan on playing at, varsity or JV? Do you plan on being a starter, a sub? So we're trying to take a look at what is this player looking at for next year. And then we also took a look at, what are they doing in the spring, and if they have any plans of playing AAU. And also we tried to put in there, an interest of what we were going to do in the summer. And then the last 2 things were specific areas that we asked players' opinions on. For example, number 13 there, it says, what ideas do you have for spring and summer basketball? So they had any suggestions as to what they would like to do differently. And then the very last question was number 14, was list any specific items that you would like to discuss with the coach. So what we would do is we would typically have these players take these 2 pieces of paper home, which would allow their parents, if their parents wanted to look at them, their parents could put down things. And then shortly, within 1 or 2 days, they brought those forms back to me. I would have my assistant coaches, my JV coach would evaluate the JV players, freshman coach would evaluate the freshman players. They would give me their evaluation. So as you take a look back at this evaluation that we have, which this evaluation was for Griffin Shaver, one of the better players that I had my last year when I coached. This would have been after his junior year. So if you take a look, there's a number that the player gives, for example, ball handling. Griffin evaluated himself as an 8, and then I evaluated myself as an 8. And you take a look that there's coaches' comments there listing things either that maybe he did well or things that he needed to improve on. And that pretty much happens through the whole evaluation. So I put this evaluation together. Once I finished this evaluation, I schedule a time with the player. And the time was either scheduled during their lunch period, a study hall, or possibly after school, where I sit down with every player in our program, freshman through our players coming back. And I would give them this evaluation beforehand. They would come into my meeting. We would go through the evaluation, and we would discuss any kind of concerns that they would have. Probably one of the most important things is at the back or the bottom of the player evaluation is I would typically kind of give a paragraph about things I thought maybe that they did well during the season, and then things that you needed specifically to improve on. So this is what we did for our players that were coming back. And one of the things I probably did my last 10 years of coaching was I actually would pull in our graduating seniors. And I would sit down with each graduating senior and kind of try to have a discussion with them about what they enjoyed the most about our program, things that we needed to continue to do, or maybe things that they, from their viewpoint, that we could do better. I think this was an extremely valuable tool for our program. It was time consuming, but I think what it did for our players is when our players then approached the spring and approached the summer, they knew these were specific things that we had discussed with them that they needed to get better at. So that's Coach B's story time here, player evaluations at the end of the season.